Hey, what's up, guys? I'm sitting here in the rain waiting for this test in about 45 minutes. So I figured I'd go over the next pay-per-view in my collection that happened right after Royal Rumble in 1998. It's the very first installment of No Way Out. It was an In Your House show, so it's basically In Your House, No Way Out of Texas. Um, this was following the Royal Rumble pay-per-view where Stone Cold had just won the Royal Rumble match. Um, and Shawn Michaels had defeated The Undertaker. Undertaker was nowhere to be seen at this time, and other huge feuds included the Nation of Domination, Ken Shamrock, among others. Interestingly enough, this pay-per-view's main event was an 8-man tag match that was originally supposed to include the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, but ended up not including him due to an injury that he got in the Royal Rumble with The Undertaker. So as this started to play out, it was actually smart in hindsight to not risk any injury with the Heartbreak Kid. No need to jeopardize the title. Everyone knows it's going to be Shawn Michaels against Stone Cold at WrestleMania. So it's good just to kind of get Stone Cold some notoriety in the meantime. So the first match is the Headbangers going up against Marc, Mero, and the artist formerly known as Goldust. A very strange group with Mero and Goldust. Goldust having Luna, Mero having Sable, and it really was meant to lead to their eventual crazy match in WrestleMania 14 with the mixed gender tag that introduced Luna's and Sable's great rivalry. The match was decent. I was never a huge fan of the Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher. They did their thing. They got the W. It was a pretty decent W. At that time, the Headbangers were really on their way up. They had just came in. They were really squashing opponents. They squashed the Hardy Boys. They squashed other tag teams that were not nearly as big as them at the time. You can see here is when the WWF is starting to gain a lot of talent. The next match was Taka Minchinoku, the newly crowned first ever light heavyweight champion, facing off against Pantera, a lucha libre wrestler who actually was very good in the ring. They had a very good match, and Taka Minchinoku came out on top. Pantera had a great match. In hindsight, it's crazy how they had this light heavyweight title, and they just didn't put much behind it whatsoever. It was like their version of the cruiserweight title, and in hindsight, they didn't really do much at all. Taka had a lot of talent, but it's evident also going through the pay-per-views later on, and I'll talk about them in some other reviews that I have, how much more talent other people had than Taka Minchinoku. They didn't really do much scouting in the cruiserweights, the light heavyweight divisions. So, I guess that's that. Taka won and gained himself notoriety. Another new person in the WWF to gain popularity, who the WWF was trying to push. Then we had the Godwins, better known later as Southern Justice, Midian, taking on the Quebecers. This was funny. This goes to show how WWF at the time could literally just have any random people in the audience pretty much and just have a random show. The Quebecers are pretty well known in Canada apparently, but no one had heard of them in the US. It was their second time on Raw, and they are headlining No Way Out. Or not, but being in No Way Out. And they took on the Godwins. It was a good match. They had some heat, according to these promos. I didn't really remember much of the Godwins. I remember them more as Southern Justice with Jeff Jarrett. But they got the win. You could tell they were trying to push the Godwins at the time, at least to be a formidable tag team. It's hard to see anybody beating the New Age Outlaws and teams like the Legion of Doom. Later on, Kane and Mankind, all those kind of teams. It's hard to see the Godwins beating them, but you always have to have that they have to have respectability behind the wins. So, you got to get them over. The next match was Blackjack Bradshaw, against Jeff Jarrett with Jim Cornette in the NWA, a few members of that, for the NWA title. This was a very short-lived gimmick by Bradshaw. I saw in the Royal Rumble he was Blackjack Bradshaw, and then later on in '98, I guess we'll know exactly when later on when I go over it. He was just known as regular Bradshaw again. So Bradshaw came out there. He had a decent performance. Young Bradshaw, you know, didn't really have much of a gimmick. The Blackjack one wasn't that bad. You know, Bradshaw started getting the upper hand on Jeff Jarrett. You know, Cornette, great heel manager. The NWA came out, got Jeff Jarrett disqualified so he could keep the belt. And it ended up being a, the Legion of Doom ended up helping out Bradshaw. So that was pretty random, I guess, just three badasses. They kind of interject into that, you know, so. But it was a straight match, solid match, nothing too special. You know, getting Jeff Jarrett known. I thought when Jeff Jarrett came in to the Royal Rumble and attacked Owen Hart, it was going to kind of shift towards that match. But Owen Hart obviously went towards the Triple H route at WrestleMania. Big feud there, and it ended up working out for the best. So next we got the War of Attrition match. Ken Shamrock, Ahmed Johnson, and the DOA defeating the Nation of Domination. The DOA, of course, including Chain, Skull, and 8-Ball, the Harris twins, and the Nation, of course, including Farouk, The Rock, D'Lo, Mark Henry, and Kama. Good match. It was a very solid match. It was the longest match of the pay-per-view, and it was good. You know, it was good. The Rock and Farouk started showing some chemistry just for it to turn around on them. The Rock gets put in the ankle lock, puts over Shamrock, gets mad at Farouk. They have this huge argument, as they have been having for weeks, and then it ended up going where they all did their little stance and their fist bump. It's something to keep an eye on going on later into that WrestleMania, the Nation of Domination, Farouk, The Rock specifically. What's going to happen with them? The Nation looks like it's crumbling apart. It was a good match, though. Next, we had Kane defeating Vader in a singles match. I thought this was the mask versus mask match, but it wasn't. Vader lands some good shots on Kane. Very good promo for this match, too. Vader... this was before Kane was really a great worker in the ring, but he still put on a solid show. Vader sold to him well. Kane got moonsaulted on and then sat up, ended up tombstoning him, choke slamming him because of Paul Bear. Hit him with the wrench afterwards. Vader was out cold. Good match. The Undertaker was not reintroduced yet, clearly, so it was, in the next 4 weeks leading into WrestleMania of '98 was when the Undertaker starts to make his comeback. When Kane calls out Stone Cold or the Shawn, whatever happens, I can't remember. Good match, not great. I love seeing the evolution of Kane. Just one of the best characters of all time by the WWF. And then we get to the main event. It's Stone Cold, Owen Hart, Cactus Jack, and Chainsaw Charlie against Triple H, the New Age Outlaws, who will soon form the D-Generation X, and a random member with Chyna. This match was a good match. I wasn't sure how excited I was to watch this match again because it's an 8-man tag. There's not really much on the line. It didn't get much better when the member that came out was Savio, Vega. Other than that, though, the match itself was good. There was a pretty solid. It was a pretty solid spot, where they wrapped up Mick Foley in some barbed wire. That was pretty extreme, even for the WWF at the time. You usually just saw that in ECW. It really goes to show how much of an influence Mick Foley and Terry Funk really put on the WWF at the time with hardcore and getting the hardcore, getting it out there. You know what I mean? You'll see later on in '99 where the hardcore title becomes 24/7 and they have some really crazy bumps, table matches. They start to bring in ECW members. But this was, it really goes to show. And this, the main stipulation for this was just to build. The main reason that this pay-per-view occurred was to build the rivalries for WrestleMania. That's why it was an In Your House. No Way Out was not nearly as big as it is nowadays, 10 years ago. So you had, Triple H and Owen Hart, who had this huge rivalry going in. Owen Hart had the belt. Triple H couldn't stand him. Owen Hart couldn't stand him, Then you had the New Age Outlaws and Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. They had this huge rivalry with the dumpster and all that stuff, and they hated each other, wanted to be hardcore, That was a really good rivalry, the New Age Outlaws and those two hardcore legends. And then you had Stone Cold, of course, who was gonna get the W, going out there, Stone Cold stunnering everybody, attacking, beating the shit out of everybody. So it was a good pay-per-view. This was the kind of pay-per-view that it was a classic WWF pay-per-view. Back in the late '90s, you saw a lot of these in-your-house pay-per-views, and they delivered. These were really good pay-per-views. At a time when you could have casket matches on Raw, Inferno matches on Raw, you could have, Hell in a Cell matches on Raw, cage matches, ladder matches. It's crazy to show how these little in-your-house pay-per-views not only drew the story so much closer in between the big pay-per-views, but also just how well they did. These were good matches, and we'll get into more of them into 1998, but it really just goes to show how good of matches that the WWF could pull, and a lot of that was due to Vince Russo, the writing talent, Jim Cornette scouting, Jim Ross, all those guys did a very fantastic job in putting the WWF on the platform that it was at in February of 1998, heading into WrestleMania 14, which will be one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time. So overall, it was a good pay-per-view, not one that you necessarily have to watch. It had some really good matches, and if you really want to see, I always like watching the pay-per-views before the big pay-per-views, because you get to see, you see a WrestleMania, and then you see the No Way Out, and you see how, like Goldust and Marc Mero were teammates, and then they hate each other, or you just get to see how the story plays out. So watch at your own risk. It's not necessarily one you have to watch. Not a bad pay-per-view, though. So I hope you guys enjoy, and, I'll see you guys next time for WrestleMania 14.